I woke up with a start, disoriented and in agony, only to find myself in a plush bedroom that hid a gruesome secret. The room that was once a sanctuary became a prison as the candles went out, and I was left with the chilling realization that I was no longer in control of my own body. 38, cast IL, everything hurts. My body ached all over, and from the very tip of my little pinky toe to the top of my head. My eyes were glued shut from being unconscious for so long that I had to squint and blink them a few times before completely opening my hazel eyes. I decided to start making small movements such as clenching my fingers and shaking my head side to side, only to feel a textured yet soft material wrapped around my head, applying a slight pressure to my forehead. Little by little, as I started regaining consciousness and awaking my dormant body, the pain began to dissipate. Taking a deep breath, I finally recollected enough strength to sit up. The sudden move made me slightly dizzy, but not significantly so. Resting once again in a new position, I took a moment to look around me and situate myself. What happened? I was sitting on a bed, cream silk sheets surrounding me, a cup of water resting on top of the night bedside table. I greedily took it and pleasured myself with the cool water. Once satisfied, I set the empty cup on the bedside once again, before setting a foot on the carpeted floor. As soon as my foot met the ground, the room got significantly dark, as the fire of a circle of red candles that surrounded the bed extinguished one by one. Regaining my balance, I quickly yanked open the window on the right side of the room. A wave of dust flew into air as I did so. I turned around to see the room more clearly. However, I wasn't ready for the view in front of me. Blood. So much blood. In a trail of golden crusts that had caked up the whole floor and some spots of the bed, some of it even smearing on 3 candles. That blood was obviously mine, but what had caused me to bleed this much? Why didn't I just heal? And then flashes of memory surged in my mind. Melinda. To my agent extraordinaire, Mythical Nilben. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Aromas E.D. Everyone. I had passed out. But what happened after that? And more importantly, why? I was quick to notice a door opposite to the window, and without hesitating, I twisted open the handle and turned on the lights. It was as I had expected. A bathroom. I removed the bandage around my head and splashed some water to my face to wake myself up a little more, and kicked out as much as dry blood as I could from my hair. But as I was brushing towards the hair that sat on my shoulder, I noticed something on my neck. 2 punctured shapes were standing proudly on the spot where my neck met my shoulder, and I froze. A mark. Who dared to mark me without my consent? As I brushed my hair to the side and examined the scars a little more closely, sparks rushed through my body. I automatically found out who was the culprit behind this. To my agent extraordinaire, Mythical Nilben. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. How dared he, claiming another woman as his Luna, and then marking me without my consent? A wave of anger crashed into my soul, making me clench my fists and explode with the sink in front of me, the water squirting all around me, leaving a wet trail towards the bed. My furious actions didn't pass unnoticed as I heard loud and quick stumps hitting what I assumed to be stairs that led to the room that I was in. My theory was proven correct as Aramas Eid and Jason both knocked and teared down the door. Castiel, what are you doing? Go back to bed. I chose to ignore Jason, who was rushing towards me, as I answered Aramas Eid. Hell no. I need to stretch and eat. Jason pulled me into a hug, crushing me against his strong torso, tightening his hold on me even more by each passing sec, while lightly kissing the top of my head as he exhaled words of concern. Had it been any other time, I wouldn't hesitate to jump into his arms and hug him with as much force back. But right now, I was terribly mad and hurt because of his actions, so I stayed still until I felt like it was too much and started pushing him away. Let me go. He seemed stunned by my words as he took a step back and looked at me worriedly. I simply stared coldly back at him. How dare you? I spat at him, my eyes flashing orange with hot, pulsating anger. Castiel, calm down. He don't try to excuse his behavior, Aramas Eid. Now please get out. There are some things that I have to deal with. I raised my voice while glancing at Jason near the end. Arama's feeling my authoritative tone, complied to my words and left through the no more existing door and waited outside. Just don't do something that you might regret later, he said before turning around and walked down the stairs, his footsteps being the only thing heard throughout the whole house as the pin-drop silence bared the air. Tension between me and the king thickening by each second as we stared each other in the eye. I have a lot to explain, Jason started. You do. I glared at him, my voice low as my eyes reflected sadness and hurt. He sighed before running a hand through his messy dark hair. I took a moment to assess him. He looked tired, completely worn out. There were visible bags under his eyes. His cheeks were more hollow as well, indicating that he had lost some weight, and there were stress marks on some spots of his face. My stomach churned with worry for him. You are in great danger, Castiel. There's someone out there trying to get you. Elder Clarence. You know him, right? He asked while lying me to check on my memory. I numbly nodded back in response, not liking having him knowing so much about how Clarence and I were involved. What did he know? He blackmailed and manipulated Melinda into summoning the moon goddess to hurt you. And as you can guess, no one can stop a god from doing what they want. He proceeded to explain. He knows something about Melinda. Something personal. And the only way to turn things around was for us to pretend to be together. That doesn't make any sense. I cut him off. He looked frustrated as he replied, It's not exactly my secret to tell. I can't really go into detail about it. You have to trust me. Trust you. Are you actually being serious? Look at me, Jason. I have a bite mark on my neck. Something that was meant to be special and consensual. I was unconscious and you took advantage of it. I raised and lowered my voice as it began to crack and fail due to my emotional state. I didn't even care to wipe off the few tears of hurt and betrayal that rolled down my face in that moment. He quickly came forward and reached out to touch me, but I took a step back. He insisted one more time and successfully grasped me in his arms. No, Angel, don't cry. Castiel, you got it all wrong, he whispered while brushing a few strands of hair out my face as he lovingly stroked his thumb over my cheek. I didn't do it because I wanted to. I did it to save you, love. He pressed a small kiss on my forehead. Angel, you were completely blacked out and bleeding non-stop. And you also had marks on your forehead. Moon phases. It was a sign from the moon goddess. I'm not sure if the summoning had anything to do with it, but the gods have it out for our bond. They wanted it complete. They know no boundaries. He cut himself off as his voice cracked with tears. They even killed you for a few seconds. I looked at him shocked. Your heart stopped beating, Castiel. He pulled me back into his arms and tight, and his hold once again. It almost seemed as if he was reviving that moment of pain as he continued to pull me impossibly closer to him. I almost lost you, Angel. Believe me, the last thing that I wanted was to give you another reason for you to hate me. I wanted to mark you, yes, but not like that, not like this. I wanted to be able to look at you in the eyes and stare at that beautiful smile of yours as I claimed you as mine. Not the sight that I had as I pierced your already bloodied skin as it was. Not with you dying in my arms. He finished as he cradled my face in his hands. It was the scariest and most painful moment of my life, Castiel. I can't lose you. He exhaled once again and let his forehead drop against mine. No matter how hurt I was from being pushed away from you, I would never let something or someone else deliberately put you in danger. What I did it for you. Tears rolled down my cheeks once again, as I slowly circled my arms around him. My anger was suddenly forgotten, as my guilty conscience about what I had done came right back to this present moment. I didn't mean it, I said after a minute of silence between the both of us. He looked back at me with confusion. To push you away that day. It wasn't by my choice. I was ordered to make you stay away from me for a while. I smiled weakly at him while removing myself from his embrace. He was about to open his mouth, but I quickly shut him up by clasping both his hands in mine. Jason, there are things about me. Things that you don't know, that are better if you don't know yet. But there's something I need you to remember. I looked at him in the eyes as I said this. I don't need you to save me. I whispered tenderly as I caressed his face softly. You are the one that needs to be saved from me. I finished while standing on the tip of my toes as I pressed my hands against his strong chest. All of my previous rage concealed to burn later, waiting for the right moment to burn later on. Right now my mind wanted peace, understanding and forgiveness. I looked at him in the eyes one more time before closing mine, and crashing my mouth against his. 39. Jason. Her lips touched mine and suddenly a fire lighted up inside me. Her soft velvety lips brushing and connecting with mine was a feeling that I wish I could hold on forever. Our desire grew more and more, strengthening our kiss, pushing each other's lips harder and harder. Her hands flew to my hair as I grabbed her neck and waist, pulling her closer. Our bodies were touching and a humming feeling could be felt in both of us. The sparks, the tingles. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. I'd never felt something like this before. I could feel our bond getting stronger. We had kissed in the past, but not like this, not this intense. Just as things were escalating to the next level, she pulled away and rested her forehead against mine. I bent down a little bit more so that she could fully support her own 2 feet on the ground. We just stayed there, eyes closed, relishing on the feeling and the moment we just had shared, and I didn't mind the slightest bit. Eventually she opened her eyes and stared back at me. Our eyes were locked and I couldn't help but smile at the angel in front of me. Her cheeks were flustered, her lips swollen and her eyes were sparkling. She looked like heaven. She smiled back at me before running her eyes through my face, leaving a small peck in my throat and resting her hand against my cheek, stroking gently. I hugged her tighter against me and kissed her forehead. I almost lost this. I almost lost her. How would I survive without her? She's my other half. The whole reason for my existence. I almost lost her to my own idiocy. Out of negligence. I was supposed to care for her, protect her, not hurt her. Even when she refused to talk with me. Can we make a promise to each other? I asked her after a moment of blissful silence. She looked at me in the eyes, curiosity swirling in her orbs. Next time we decide to keep the other one away for a matter of security or any other reason that doesn't imply self-choice or will. We must tell each other. She opened her mouth to reply, but I cut her off. I know that things are not easy for you. We had a confusing beginning, too absorbed with each other to actually try this, to try us, and look at where it ended. I could have lost you. I can't. I won't bear to ever lose you again. Please. We don't need to tell the motives. Just tell me that you don't hate me, that you have to stay away. Please, no more unnecessary pain. I begged her silently while pulling her impossibly closer and resting my head on hers once again, whilst closing my eyes to keep my tears at bay. She disconnected our heads and held my face between her hands and smiled. Please don't break this one cast, I'm begging you. I promise to. I replied while looking at her. Then her smile fell, her hand unconsciously moving toward the mark on her neck. I wanted to ask how it had healed so fast, but I decided that now probably wasn't the best time. Jason, I need to go, she said while stepping away from our embrace. As if sensing my agitation, she grabbed my hand and explained further. A lot has happened in the last 24 hours. I need to go back home. I have many questions and need answers. I promise that once everything is settled, I will explain everything to you. I nodded back in understanding, even though my heart hurt a little due to her departure. She's going home, damn it. It's not like she's going to a whole new planet. I understand. Just make sure to message me at the end of every day so that I know that you are okay. I pushed a strand of her hair behind her little ear. Come on. I'll drop you at home. I don't trust you to drive just yet, I said while whirling her around. But I'm perfectly fine. She tried to retaliate. Shush, now come. I tapped her butt twice, motioning for her to walk faster. She looked at me through the corner of her eye to check my face as I touched her bum. All she saw was my smile, lightly tinted with a smirk as I quirked a brow at her, challenging her to actually say something. She simply scoffed while rolling her eyes. An amused smile painted on her face. And where do you both think that you are going? Aramas Eid interrupted us while leaning against a wall in the hall. I'm driving Crusts to her house, I said while grabbing her hand. And is that a good idea? He asked while looking at Crusts waiting for her reply. Yes, it is, she replied with a cheeky smile. Aramazid raised his eyebrows, surprised. Wow, you are in an awfully good mood. I don't even want to know what you both did in those. He stopped to check the watch on his wrist. 20 minutes. Sorry we kept you waiting for so long. She apologized while blushing. I just shook my head in amusement. No problem, I have my phone on me to keep me entertained, he said while putting his phone back in his pocket. We left the building and suddenly Crusts let out a gasp of realization. You brought me to one of your old houses? She asked, looking back at Aramazid in amazement. Yeah. You see, when I found you lying lifeless in Jason's arms, I didn't have much time for bigger reactions. I knew that you would be safe here. It's quiet and it would help you heal faster, he explained. Crusts nodded, and once we were all settled in my car, Crusts beside me and Aramazid with a grim expression in his face. So what exactly happened while I was out? She asked once we were on the road. I looked at Aramazid through the mirror only to find him looking back at him. You started bleeding. Terribly so. You wouldn't heal. Your blood just kept flooding as if it had a mind of its own. Then these symbols, moon shapes, appeared in your forehead, like a burn mark, and they were glowing. In the meanwhile, the whole school was falling apart. There was an earthquake, I believe. There were bricks and dust everywhere. Everyone started screaming and running. Jason picked you up and left. I found you both later on the hall, the vampire said. I picked you up and, as you can guess, I marked you. Those symbols are a message from my goddess. I don't know what came over me. I just knew that I had to mark you. And then your heart stopped beating. Aramazid later found us and rushed us outside. He got in my car and sped over here. The earthquake stopped meanwhile. We rested you on the bed and Aramazid started lighting these special candles, and when we checked, your heart was beating again and you finally healing. I finished telling her what happened and glanced at her. Her face was crunched up in confusion. Her eyes held many questions. I too had a fair amount of questions myself. The rest of the drive remained in silence. I had placed Crusts' hand in my right one as I used the other to control the wheel. We pulled over at the main entrance of her house. Well, mansion. As if hearing the motor of the car, Maria bolted out of the house with two unknown men towing behind her. Aramazid got out of the car and entered inside the house without acknowledging anyone. What else would you expect from a vampire? He's naturally rude. Who are those two? I asked Crusts while pointing with my head towards the incredibly tall man and the one that stood beside him. That would be Uriel and Samuel. They're family. She smiled sweetly. I nodded back in response and smiled back at her. I missed you, she said after a while. My heart twisted in a bittersweet feeling, remembering how painful it was the time that we were apart and how mutual it was. How she had missed me too. I missed you too, I replied while gently caressing the side of her face. We both started leaning in, our lips almost touching, when all of a sudden an agitated Maria knocked on the black-tainted windows of my car. I groaned before leaning my forehead against hers, to which she replied with a laugh. I smiled softly at the heavenly sound. I pulled away and she opened the door of the car and got assaulted by a small woman that wouldn't stop scolding everyone around her. Just as I looked away, I noticed a tall, dark figure looming behind the entrance door. A pair of glowing red eyes stared back at me, making a shiver run down my spine, and I quickly realized who he was. 40 Crusts, Jason, are you okay? I asked, looking back at him, noticing that he had suddenly tensed as his heartbeat started accelerating like crazy. He was looking towards the door, almost in a trance, never taking his eyes off of it. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfading patience, enthusiasm. This time placing my hand on his shoulder, that seemed to bring him back to reality as he quickly snapped his gaze back towards me. Yeah, I just thought I had seen something, he answered, trying to sound nonchalant about it. I will see you soon, okay? I said, trying to distract him from whatever that it was bothering him, even though I know perfectly well who was trying to get his attention. I gently cradled his face between my hands and placed a quick peck on his lips, watching as his eyes turned a shade darker while staring back at me. I felt brave while doing it so, completely aware of the numerous pairs of eyes watching and spying on our interaction. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Noben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Uriel and Samuel pretended to talk among each others, but I could still feel the slight smirk on their faces. As for my father, I could feel his perpetrating glare on my back. Jason placed a last light peck on my forehead before returning to his car and reviving the engine. "Don't forget to call me, okay?" he asked one last time, worried that something bad might happen while he was away. "I won't." I smiled in response and watched him roll up his window and leave the mansion. I turned back towards my audience, who were either smiling like fools or scowling at me. "So you two finally made up, huh?" Uriel asked while smirking. I simply nodded back at him, trying to hide the smile that threatened to show in my face. Ignoring the rest of their comments, I entered the door and followed the shadow that seemed to try to run from me. Said shadow led me to the living room, where Aramas Edis sat with his notebook as always. And a scowling, freshly seated devil. "Are we going to pretend that I didn't see you, or are we actually going to talk about you spying on me and trying to fuck around with my mate?" I asked while sitting down with a knowing smirk in front of the infamous Lucifer Morningstar, whose eyes were burning with a raging fire like the pits of hell. Aramas Edi, on the other hand, closed his notebook, looking shocked at my language. I think that it was the first time he has seen me curse. "I don't like seeing you playing around with boys," he retorted. "Boy, he's my mate. And you know that. You were fine about it a few weeks ago. What changed?" I asked, curious at his non-logical rage. "Just because I'm fine knowing about it doesn't mean that I'm fine with seeing it. So why didn't look away?" I cut him off only for him to ignore me and keep on going. Besides, I had a meeting with Aurora. I wanted to know more about who she mated my children with, and more importantly, why. Let me tell you, the answers are rather shocking, but seem to gain not only my attention but Ramazid Ease as well. Apparently Aurora wasn't responsible for mating either you or you brother. He dropped the bomb, leaving us rather shocked. If it wasn't her, then who did it? How is it even possible? I asked, baffled. Suddenly Aramas Edi gasped. "No way," he whispered before opening his notebook once again, going back and forth between pages of endless written S and Scrabble S. Father, on the other hand, looked at the young vampire rather amused, as if already knowing what was going through Aramas Edi's mind. "Do you remember why you became who you are today?" Father looked at me with an unrecognizable emotion swirling through his eyes. I looked back at him, confused, frowning. My love for your mother wasn't supposed to happen. For the first time ever, the order in the universe was broken. We corrupted our fates. I didn't know what to say, so I just kept listening to him. Your mother was sent down to hell with a mission. It completely backfired, for the both of us, as we fell silently in love with each other. He smiled as if reviving memories in his head. Then his smile fell slowly. Life works in a perfect balance. Evil lives in the underworld and good lives in heaven. So when one of the most prestigious of the good remained good in a place full of evil, completely voluntarily, chaos broke loose. The world was unbalanced, and the dead got revolted, and so did they indeed. The dead people that lived peacefully in heaven wanted to see their loved ones, their indeed loves, that resided in hell, dead but not completely, assigned to be alive enough to feel pain, to pay for their crimes, their sins. The rest of the gods were divided between accepting this bond or having us to end it. Most of them tried to accept us due to fear, to what I would do to their people as revenge, knowing fully well that they couldn't save everyone from the devil. It was all set in the battlefield. The Dead War, I said, while shivering, remembering seeing many souls disappear and cease to exist, burned down to ashes. The blood that flooded down my face and the many stabbing wounds on my brother's skin as we fought our way through the war. He nodded back. Many souls were lost that day. The pent-up anger that had been reserved 15 years was all released in less than 24 hours. Finding out that your mother was pregnant added a lot of fuel to the fire. What kind of creatures would you be? Many were scared, as many others were curious. Your mother and I worried about it. You were twins. A boy and a girl. That was balanced enough. He made a dramatic pause and sighed. Fate, however, had other ideas. If you were born with the strongest male seed of evil and the strongest female seed of good, then you must have both as well. Some sorts of a good demon. The light ghost and a bad angel. The angel on fire. I still wonder who and why they gave you those stupid mouthful names. Arama's Eid intervened with amusement. Lucifer glared at him, making the vampire drop his smile and straighten up in his seat. But what matters that you were both perfectly balanced as you should be. You were perfect in every sense of the word, Castiel. Perfect to hold the most important of all powers. The balance of the world. The virtute and ignis. He finished. So fate did this. I asked, still confused. I believe so. He nodded solemnly. But why? It doesn't make any sense. Why Jason? Why Samuel? I asked again, trying to wrap my head around all of this new information. By the look on Father's face, I knew that I wasn't the only one missing answers. Jason was obligated to mark me. He said that he felt something that told him that the only way to save me was to bite me. I don't even know why the Vertitium Ignis was triggered because of this. I said, giving more information to try to solve this problem. And you trust his words? Lucifer inquired then, and dripping in his tone. Why shouldn't I? I fired back. I've done my research. The boy isn't as reliable as he seems to be. Do you know why his mother is the way she is now? Let's change the subject. Arama's Eid intervened once again, not liking where the conversation was headed. As far as I'm aware, his family was also involved on the fall of the previous queen. Father leaned back against the couch while a flame started to rise where Arama's Eid was seated, biting his legs. A sign for him to not order the devil around. The vampire hissed in pain before apologizing quietly. Castiel, your heart stopped beating, correct? Arama's Eid asked, opening his notebook, once again while holding his most injured leg. My little girl died for the first time, Lucifer said excitedly, his eyes burning brighter than before. He was just like a beast, switching between hot and cold in a matter of seconds. I guess. I replied, still confused as to why he was excited. His daughter was dead for a few minutes. That's idiosyncratic. Tell me, where did your soul go to? Nowhere. I don't remember anything. He frowned upon hearing these words before cruising his fingers and hands together. Dad? I asked, worried at his silent behavior. Tell me what else happened when you died. His voice void of emotion. Just pure cold. There were moon shapes on her forehead, sir. Burning brightly as an earthquake hit us and the building started to fall apart. It all stopped when Jason marked her. Arama's Eid answered for me. He was awake in that moment, after all. Lucifer absorbed his words and stayed silent for a few more minutes. It seems like fate is playing its cards differently this time. If you try to refuse its plans for you, it will impose them onto you without a choice. That still doesn't explain the moon marks. Arama's Eid said. No, it doesn't. That's why we need to talk with Aurora again. Father said, standing up. What about Clarence? He is trying to summon Aurora. He's also responsible for all of these new possessions. I said when I noticed Lucifer's intentions of leaving. Your mother and cousins are upstairs. I'm sure you still have many questions. Go talk with them. He said, dismissing me. But Dad, he has Nero. Will he cut me off? Clarence is mine. He growled out, his eyes burning like liquid lava as the horns on the shadow of his head started to groan and his nails started edinating. The whole room was set on fire, making Arama's Eid have a fit of coughing as I tried to use my powers to put the fire down. As much as I tried, the rage of the devil was stronger, faster and smarter, spreading like a plague and burning the furniture down to ashes, only slowing down when a melodic voice resonated from upstairs. Lucifer Morningstar, I had just bought that table. 41. Jason. I think I'm starting to understand why Castiel has so many secrets and opts to keep quiet about them. The figure watching me. I know who it was. I felt that presence before. It's Castiel's father. Lucy. She had called him. Even though I'm almost certain that it was just one of her many lies. I could end this secrecy. I really could. I asked Dean, my private investigator. to obtain information about crusts before, and then regretted it and asked him to destroy those same evidences, but it would only take a matter of minutes for him to get me that information back, especially since the research was already done. It was a temptation. It really was. Curiosity kept eating my insides slowly but surely. My mind kept swirling through the many possibilities. How easy it would be for me to understand everything, to know who she truly is. But what irked me the most was her father. His energy was frightening. Everything around him seemed to turn to cold stone as his malicious waves rocketed against my bones, creeping upon me, shaking and breaking me to the core, to make me quiver in fear. He could not be human. She could not be human. Her healing capacities, her knowledge, her secrets, everything pointed that she wasn't a human being. But oddly enough, that thought didn't scare me the slightest. It made curious. Every little new thing that I learned about her life had me craving for more. Heavens! Dear goddess, what game are you playing with me? Thinking about the goddess of the moon had my train of thoughts changing their lane. Clarence was still hellbent on bringing her down onto earth, amongst the living, for the sole purpose of punishing my mate, for the most idiotic and unreasonable motive ever. Problem for later. As of right now, my duty is to check on my people to make sure everyone is okay after the earthquake. I've already got men on the field, especially at school, to rebuild the destroyed buildings and grounds. The damage felt heavier in the moment rather than in reality. It's predicted for the school to be up and running again sometime next week. So far there were no deaths, just a few injured, but nothing major or worrisome. Pulling up at the pack house, I quickly called everyone for a brief meeting. There were hundreds of teenagers living here, so a gathering wasn't as quick as I had wished. But better late than never, I guess. Nonetheless, everyone managed to fill the meeting room as expected. Thank you everyone for coming. I started off my speech, my eyes searching through the crowd for more familiar faces. As all you know, we've been unfortunately hit by an earthquake. Luckily enough, no one got severely hurt, and the damages are not as bad as they seem to be. School and extracurricular activities will restart next week, so take this time off to relax and express your feelings about the whole situation. There's a team of specialized doctors and psychologists to accompany and assist you if you need any of their services at your disposal. Their contacts will be dropped in your emails in the next few hours. The bills will be paid by PAC funds, so don't fret about prices while seeking for help. A murmur of conversations and opinions surged after I stopped talking. I locked eyes with Axel, who was already watching me with a gleam of hope shining on his brown orbs. Alpha, are you going to address the Alpha command that you submitted us to, regarding your plans for your future mate and queen? Isabella fired back at me, addressing me as Alpha, fury shining bright on her face, showing her distaste and slight disgust towards my previous actions. As soon as she spoke, a louder murmur surged. Everyone had mixed feelings towards the whole situation. Some even looked back in shock to Isabella due to her blunt disrespect towards the crown and her malicious intentions behind her innocent, curious question. Yes, I will. Thank you, Isabella, for your input. The Alpha command was simply a routine exercise. The subject of my mate was somewhat a test. Let's put in simpler words. I needed to know what my pack thought about my true mate, especially because she's not one of us. It was a loyalty test, you could say. By imposing you with another female, I could truly see who was in favor of having my mate, Crusts Jones, as their queen. The results were rather pleasing, seeing as so many of you rejected and tried to retaliate the command that was being dropped upon you. I would also like to clarify and celebrate the marking of the future queen. I apologize for the pain and inconvenience brought to you. I just needed to be sure about your true feelings before officially marking my mate and bounding our lives together, since it's the first time that a non-werewolf creature is being mated with an Alpha king. I tried to explain, praying that all of them had bought my mate up lie. I looked around the room once again, noticing Tiffany and Melinda hurrying out without anyone noticing. I'll talk with her later. I snapped my gaze back to my group of friends, who were all incredibly shocked and still not completely convinced like the rest of the PEC members in the room, who were smiling and cheering at the news. Are there any other questions? I asked to the crowd. A few pack members had questions regarding school. Others about how was Cast doing and if she was injured during the earthquake, which made my beast stumble with appreciation for their concern. All right, if that's all. The meeting is over. Have a great day, and thank you again for coming. Don't hesitate to talk with me regarding any other issue. Everyone bowed down before exiting quietly and in order. Everyone except Axel. Isabella. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeline Nilben. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. William and Ethan. Soon enough the room was completely cleared except for the 6 of us. We stayed in silence, simply staring at each other before Isabel finally snapped. You marked Cast ill? She asked incredulously. I did. I answered her shortly. Jason stopped with the 2-worded answers already and start explaining. Because if you think for a fraction of a second that we bought you little lie, you are badly mistaken. Axel confessed. What did you do to her? Where is she? Isabella kept on pushing. Who the hell do you take me for? A monster. As if I would ever hurt her. I snapped back, getting slightly irritated at her constant accusations and hostility towards me. Not that I didn't deserve it though. You have hurt her before. Now care to answer my question? Isabella said heartlessly. Bella, calm down. I heard Will whisper softly to her while pulling her towards him, noticing my hurt expression and temporizing. She's back at home with her family in Ramazidi. She needed a little time off to get herself together. She messaged me before the meeting if you want to check it for yourself. I answered while shoving my phone towards her direction, daring her to actually take my phone. We had a short stare-down contest, but, as predicted, she eventually backed down. Ma'am, please just tell us what's going on already. I'm not sure if you noticed, but this is taking a huge toll on us. All of us. Elijah interrupted, desperation lacing his voice as he rested his hand against his forehead as if feeling a headache. I sighed and pinched the bridge of my nose before looking back at them. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeline Nilben. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. But not here. Get in the car and meet me outside. I just need to check on something. They looked at me suspiciously but did as I told them nonetheless. When they finally left, I followed the path that Melinda and Tiffany had taken while slipping out of the meeting in hopes of finding Melinda, getting info about her situation with her mate and how we were going to deal with Clarence. My prayers had apparently been heard as I saw a flash of a red-haired female near the bathrooms. I got closer but quickly took several steps back when I heard a high squeal voice screaming back at Mel. I'll never accept you as my mate. I'm not a fucking lesbian. I'm not. I refuse to accept you. My heart actually ate formal Inda, but when I heard her furious voice replying to Tiffany, I decided to step out of the scene before getting caught and let her handle it on her own, knowing that she would need some time to cool off on her own before meeting up with me. I texted her a small "Are you okay? Meet up with me later," for her to see after her fight with the blonde wolf was done, just to make sure. As promised, I met with the rest of the group outside. They were all peacefully waiting for me inside the 8-seated Land Rover. I quickly hopped on the driver's seat and sped down the road, watching as the sun began to set. The ride wasn't long, but it was extremely uncomfortable as the music playing on the radio was the only sound that could be heard inside the car. Everyone was either staring out from the window or down to their hands. A bifurcation between a gravel road and a continuation of the smooth tar was ahead in a mile distance. Taking the right gravel side, we continued our journey until we reached the outsides of the city and into another zone of dark woods. I pulled over and parked near a tall tree. Getting out of the car, everyone followed my lead into the woods. We sat down on top of a few smoothed down, due to the rain, dark grey-coloured rough rocks. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeline Nilben. Heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Isabella said. "Yeah, spill the beans," Ethan said, trying to look intimidating. The thought alone made me smile. "Oi," Isabella repeated, gaining my full attention once again. I cleared out my throat and started explaining as much as I could without telling them about Melinda's situation, which didn't make things any easier to try to explain it to them. but I told them everything nonetheless. Poor Castiel. She must be so shaken up right now. William said concern, to which the rest of the group agreed and murmured their empathy for my mate. All of them except Axel, who looked like he was deep in thought. He didn't look worried about Castiel's condition per se. There was something else bothering him. My theory was proven correct when I saw him expertly whisk his phone out of his pocket and send a text to someone. "What's wrong, Axel?" I confronted him. He looked startled before quickly putting his phone inside his pocket once again. "I don't know. I feel like you are hiding something else from us," he said while slightly narrowing his eyes at me. A ding sounded through the rather quiet forest. Axel quickly checked his message before glaring back at me. "And apparently hiding it from your mate as well." He threw the slight shade at me. "You were texting Castiel?" I asked, surprised. I knew that they had gotten closer. But how close? "Answer my question, Jason. What is that you are hiding?" he asked with a serious expression painted on his face. The rest of the group had quickly turned to his side and looked at me expectantly. "It's not my place to tell." "I can't tell you," I said in exasperation. "You can't or you won't," Isabella decided to add. "Just tell us the whole truth already," Elijah said while shaking his head slightly in a disappointing manner. "Yeah, Jason, tell them the truth," a feminine voice said behind me. I turned around, recognizing the voice, and felt my face pale when I saw the girl now in front of me, covered in blood from head to toe. Tell them the truth. And who was I to deny her wish? 42 Castiel. I guess that Elvis Presley was right, Alf, after all. She might walk like an angel, talk like an angel, but Charmaine was the devil in disguise. In other words, my mother was furious at my father, and it was hilarious. What would people think if they saw the devil himself get scolded by his wife? Apparently that table was custom-made, and incredibly expensive too, so seeing it burnt down to ashes didn't particularly please my mother. "Calm down, please," Father begged. "Tell me to shut up again, Lucifer. I dare you," Mother replied with steam coming out of her ears. "Honey, I'll buy you 7 more of those tables, but please stop shouting." 7 re. What an odd number, even though I know why he chose to say it. How could he just mention it so casually in a conversation with his other half? Lucifer Morningstar is one of a kind. I stopped my train of thoughts. Apparently Mother got enough of the devil's games and decided to let out her wrath by throwing a shoe at him. "To my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Noble, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm." 6 left now, he rumbled while rubbing the left side of his head. "She might be an angel, but she for sure has a great aim." Headshot 666 points for Charmaine Morningstar. Meanwhile, I was helping Arama's E to get up on his own 2 feet once again. His pale skin was still healing from the burn marks. I decided to make small incisions on my hands and let my boo him. We never tried having him bite me due to the unknown possibilities of blood overload having him poisoned. Once everything was decently in order again, Father hugged Mother to his chest and kissed her forehead, to which Mother murmured something that I wasn't able to understand in response. Lucifer chuckled or whatever that she had said and patted her softly on the head while swaying slightly side to side in each other's embrace. I just tried to look somewhere else to not intrude on their little moment. But just because I didn't, it doesn't mean that someone else hadn't. Clearing his throat loudly stood a tall Uriel, followed by his fellow brothers, all of them blushing deeply while staring at either the ground or the ceiling. I also spotted a confused-looking Samuel behind them, trying to peek between the muscular bodies, so that he could see what was causing this commotion. My parents broke apart and straightened their backs, turning their business mode on. "I have a few calls to make," Lucifer said while excusing himself out of the room. My mother, on the other hand, seemed to have finally noticed me and pulled me into a tight hug. "My little angel, I missed you so much." "I missed you too, Mama," I said quietly into her lavender embrace. "How is it going with your mate?" "Jason, right?" she asked while slowly walking back upstairs, to which I nodded. The whole crew was following ahead like a bunch of dummies. It's really funny to see everyone act so stiff and tensed around my parents, even if they were family. But nothing that a few cups of tea later, made by Maria, wouldn't cure. Soon enough everyone was settled down in the smaller library upstairs, making small chit-chat among each others with a few laughs every once in a while. "So I think you may have some questions," Mother said while sipping on her second cup of scalding hot tea. "She is married to the devil, so I'm pretty sure she is used to things scorching her all the time." "Yeah, my mark. What is going to do to me?" I shooted my most worrying question. She rested her cup down on the nearby table while smiling softly at me. "Usually it would help strengthen your bond with your mate. Your hormones might be a little bit all over the place for a while, but nothing worth of worrying. You are not a werewolf, so I presume that you won't go into heat. You might crave for his attention and time more than usual. You might as well start feeling each other's emotions. We are not sure about anything. Due to the unusual circumstances, we can only make suppositions. Only time will tell," she finished. My mind was running many miles per hour, trying to come up with the numerous situations that might go down due to this newly found bond. Feel each other's emotions. That can be concerning. Seeing my frown, Mother cocked her head to the side slightly. "You haven't told him yet," she concluded by watching my reactions. I shook my head no while looking down. "Why?" "Your mission is done with. You can tell him now." "I don't know how," I blurted out, embarrassed. Mother stayed silent while staring at me. "It's not like I can push him aside and tell him like, hey listen, my father is the devil and my mother is the angel Charmine. Oh, and you know about us being mates? Well, it wasn't Aurora. Or your goddess that you dream and pray to every night that I've personally known my whole life. It wasn't her matching us as mates. It was fate. I will sound like I'm completely out of my mind," I went on rumbling. Mother absorbed my words for a while before coming with an answer. "Then why don't you just show him?" I looked back confused at her. "Wouldn't that be worse?" She simply shrugged her shoulders and picked up her cup again from the table while taking another sip. "I have a feeling that he will find everything down once the werewolf Felders manage to summon Aurora. You will be able to kill many birds with just one stone," she said cryptically. "What do you mean?" I asked, still confused. "Clarence put a lot of effort to get Aura to come down. Therefore he wouldn't miss that moment even if his life depended on it." "How did you know about Clarence's plans?" I asked, shocked. Even I don't know the whole story. And here she was sending subliminal messages saying that she knew the whole thing. Even Melinda's secret. Her eyes glowed brightly in response as she verbally ignored my question. "We will take full advantage of that. We use Aurora as a distraction and get Clarence to free Nero. If Clarence is after the Vertity Agnes, he will mostly likely try to come for you. And right now your weakest point is your mate Bond, which he hopefully believes that is Aurora's doing. We will use that weak point as our strongest. He doesn't know the true origin of your bond, so he will be misled, edge towards the moon goddess to try whatever he is trying to do with the intention of either using your bond as blackmail or weaken you to perform a spell to remove Vertity and Ignis from you." I raised my eyebrows in surprise but kept listening. "Once he realizes that Aurora has no business regarding your bond, he will be defenseless. That's when we strike. He won't even know what's coming for him. It will be hell on earth. We need you and Aroma's Eid and hopefully Nero to lead everyone back to safety. Any bystanders or worse yet most likely, probably crowd, out of the building. I'm sure everyone will have sorted it out who you are by then," she said jokingly at the end, as if she hadn't just spilled a whole blood-shedding clan just now. I not started to churn in stomach. This doesn't sound safe the slightest bit. What if something happens to one of the students? "Isabella, to my agent extraordinaire, Madeleine Nilben, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm." To Axel, "I would never be able to forgive myself if any of that were to happen. Have you heard anything else about Nero?" I asked, concerned about my brother. My mother's eyes turned sad at the mention of her son. "Sadly, no. There has been, however, over 800 new reports on possessed creatures, including humans, so we have to be careful to not hurt any of them. It seems that Clarence is trying to build an army, hence why your cousins are here too. The more the better." She finished while trying to hide her anxious fingers that seemed to play with every little thing they managed to touch. I could feel a headache coming already. pounding in the back of my head. A cold sweat running down my back. "Cass, are you feeling okay?" Michael asked, suddenly looking at me, interrupting his conversation with his siblings. I suddenly started feeling dizzy and decided to close my eyes. "Yeah, I think I will lay down for a while." To my audiobook extraordinaire, mythical, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing crusts, enthusiasm, I said while standing slowly and making my way towards my bedroom. I tumbled a little bit, yet slowly I managed to get to my bed. I had just sat down when my phone dinged, signaling that I had just received a message. I decided to check it, and saw that it was from Axel regarding the whole Melinda situation. I didn't pay much attention to it, and just answered honestly to his question, feeling the headache getting worse. I turned off my phone and lay down while closing my eyes. A few minutes later, a shiver of anxiety swept over me as my heart started beating wildly in my chest, the light hairs on my arms rising in defense. However, I knew that this heart beating wildly wasn't mine. It was Jason's. 43 Jason. My heart was beating wildly against my rib cage, a cold sweat breaking from all of my pores. "What did she do?" "If you don't tell them, I will," she said while attempting to wipe the blood from her face. "Melinda, what the fuck happened to you?" "Whose blood is that?" Axel boasted as if just snapping out of his shocked trance. The rest of the group just kept quiet while staring at her in shock. "Relax, would you? It's just a deer. My wolf needed some carnage," she said as if it didn't faze her the slightest. Wolves aim for a clean kill. For her to be covered in blood from head to toe means that something was off. Her emotions were out of control and she went on a rampage. "Mel, are you okay?" I asked more softly, looking at her in the eye. "Mel, okay, what the fuck is going on in here?" Isabella snapped, annoyed at the whole secrecy. Noticing the nickname picked for Melinda, I looked back at Melinda with uncertainty. She wasn't thinking clearly. I shouldn't let spill her soul just because she was having a mental breakdown. "Mel, Tiffany is my mate and she rejected me," she said, looking emotional as her eyes void of any feelings, any regret. She was ready to put an ending to all of this. She was mentally tired of constantly hurting. Everyone else just gasped and looked at her in shock once again. "She constantly sleeps around and does things on purpose to hurt me because she knows I haven't accepted her rejection yet. I just thought that maybe, just maybe." Her voice kept getting quieter by the each passing moment until she was left whispering. "Maybe we could be together," she said softly with a tear rolling down her pale cheek. "Oh no." I exhaled while pulling her into a hug. She immediately crashed down and started crying, muttering how much of an idiot she was for thinking they'd ever accept her. "Stoned, to say that. It's not your fault, okay?" I whispered, trying to comfort her as much as I could. I turned back to the group, Melinda still sobbing in my arms, and watched as their once rage-filled faces turned into ones of sadness and pity. Melinda was blackmailed to do what she did. Our act of pretending to be together was meant to get a reaction out of Tiffany in order to try to fix this whole mess. Her main goal was to get it with me because of my status. Seeing what she desires with her mate was bound to affect her. Clarence wouldn't have a leverage over them, and Tiffany could help since she's a direct heir of the goddess. Things just didn't work out as expected. I explained a little more. Everyone was quiet, just digesting all of this new information. That was, to my agent extraordinaire, mythical, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm. Until Ethan opened his mouth. "Honestly," thought Tiffany, to which the rest of the group agreed and kept on egging Tiffany, calling her a bitch and many other names that I wouldn't dare to say out loud anywhere public. Somehow a few lines of the whole dissing session managed to get a smile and a small laugh out of Melinda. She sat down next to everybody else and wiped her runny nose. "I owe all of you an apology," she said, sniffling. Isabella shook her head and got up towards Melinda and pulled her into a hug. "You don't owe us nothing. I'm sorry we weren't there for you," she said, smiling sadly at the red-headed girl. "Guys, I really hate to break your moment, but now you're all covered in blood too," Ethan said while pointing to our clothes with his finger, while his lips were ducked out like a weirdo. "Dude, shut up," Elijah said while trying to cover his face. Yeah, but he has a point. We should go back home soon. It's late, and unless you want to answer more questions about that blood, I suggest sneaking back into the pack house as soon as we can, Axel said while standing up and wiping off the imaginary dust off his jeans. You are right. Come on, everyone. Hop back in the car. Melinda tried to not stain the car seats, I said jokingly, making everyone let out a small laugh. Likewise, once we were all back at home in safety and well, clean, since everyone took a shower and changed clothes, we all reunited in a small living room, exclusive for my alpha wing in the house. The boys seated down either on the couch or the floor, which means everyone sat on the couch except Ethan because he said, and I quote, "I'm not like most boys. I'm quirky," to which we just nodded and moved on, figuring that leaving him to be with all of his weirdness was better rather than question him about his life choices. Hell, I'm afraid to know what he would answer. The girls just sat in a large armchair talking among each other. It seems that those two are getting along very well. Isabella is after all the only genuine female friend that Melinda has ever had, so having some girl back up in her fragile situation is something to be exhilarated about. I had an armchair of my own, the one that I usually use to read a book or document here in the pack house in peace. Melinda, could you tell us what went down between you and Tiffany this afternoon? I said, turning my business mode on. Her smile that had been painted by Bella just a few seconds ago dropped as soon as she heard her mate's name, her posture becoming stiff in contrast to her relaxed state before. Everyone ceased their conversations, understanding that the subject we were about to touch was serious. To my agent extraordinaire, Madeline Nilban, heartfelt thanks for your unfailing patience, enthusiasm, she said soberly. I nodded back at her as a signal for her to proceed. She was not happy. In fact, she was terribly mad. At first she had been incredibly hurt and shocked when you announced me as your future Luna. During the earthquake, she pulled me into a classroom and she took a deep breath, and she kissed me. Mel rubbed her eyes as if trying to hide her tears. She kissed me and fed me with hope. She took another deep breath and pushed her hair back. She told me that she loved me. She let out a small bitter laugh while shaking her head side to side. So to say that she wasn't happy when she found out that it was a lie is to put it lightly. She went completely rabid, started yelling at me, calling me these really hurtful things. She said that she could never love me, that I was an aberration, anti-nature and shit. Melinda licked her salty lips and held her head high once again. I rejected her back. Right there and then, I completely broke our bond. She smirked heavily. She didn't like it. Not the slightest bit. The pain that I had felt all this time, it hit her like a train, and then she hesitated before saying the next part. She was furious, all right, her breathing was rag for a sec and making her swallow a dry mouthful of air. She said that she would do anything necessary to bring her lineage back here on Earthstar than predicted. She wants the goddess to hurt me for breaking the bond. Wait, that means, Axel said, perplexed before I interrupted him. It means that the moon goddess is going to walk on this earth in the next few days. Not only to hurt Castiel, but to possibly curse Melinda as well. My body went numb as the words escaped my mouth. Everything else around became just background music. My heart for the nth time today started beating wildly with no intents of stopping soon. The whole room seemed to be spinning, but there was only one thing running through my mind. Castiel. 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 My knees suddenly lost their strength as another wave of weakness swallowed me whole. I couldn't hear anyone else, just my quick breathing and racing heart. I pulled out my phone from my pocket and quickly dialed her phone number that had by now become automatic to press against the screen. Each ring seemed to pull me further away from reality, and the feeling has got stronger and stronger. I tried to clutch my head in an attempt of keeping my balance and remain conscious, but the constant feeling of being tired and drained kept consuming me, a feeling so foreign that didn't even feel like it was mine. I finally crashed down and gave up, letting the darkness consume me for good, the burning sensation in my forehead acting as the final stroke to my undoing.